It was a quiet late afternoon in downtown Los Angeles, the kind of hour where the sun hangs low, the sidewalks glow orange, and people move slowly, winding down from the day. Steven Seagal walked calmly along the street, dressed in simple clothes, a loose black jacket, plain jeans, and dark sunglasses. He carried a small shopping bag in one hand, the kind that made him look like any ordinary man finishing errands. No one looking at him would have guessed his past, the grueling Navy SEAL training, the elite missions, the years of combat mastery. Today, he wasn't a warrior. He was just a peaceful man enjoying the silence of the city. That peace didn't last long. From a nearby corner, a broad-shouldered stranger stepped into the sidewalk with an energy that immediately felt wrong, loud, aggressive, impatient. He walked with a swagger that screamed arrogance. His headphones were blasting, his jaw clenched, like he was spoiling for trouble before the night even started. Seagal shifted slightly to give him space, but the man didn't slow down. Their shoulders collided, hard. Seagal stopped, steady as a pillar. The stranger staggered back half a step, surprised. He ripped out one earbud and glared. "Watch where you're going, old man," he snapped. Seagal's voice was calm, almost gentle. "I apologize. Didn't mean to bump into you." The man scoffed, annoyed by Seagal's politeness. "Yeah. You trying to act tough or something?" Seagal shook his head. "No. Just passing by." But the man wasn't done. Something about Seagal's calmness bothered him, like it challenged his ego. He stepped closer, too close, breathing anger. "What's with the attitude? You think you can just hit me and walk away?" "I didn't hit you," Seagal said, still quiet. "Let's keep this peaceful." People nearby began to slow down, sensing tension. A couple walking their dog paused, watching. A teenager across the street lifted his phone slightly, curious. The stranger pushed Seagal's shoulder with 2 fingers, testing him. "You don't just walk away from me," he growled. Seagal exhaled slowly, patient, controlled. "I'm not here for trouble." But the man didn't listen. And what he did next, he would regret for the rest of his life. The street had grown tense. Pedestrians who were once casually strolling now slowed, sensing the storm brewing between 2 men who seemed, at first glance, completely mismatched. One, the stranger, young, hot-headed, full of arrogance and bravado. The other, Steven Seagal, calm, collected, exuding a quiet power that few could recognize at a glance. The man's chest heaved as he glared down at Seagal. "You think you're slick, huh? Just walking around like nothing happened. You trying to act tough?" he spat, his voice rising with frustration. Seagal's response was measured, almost soothing. "I didn't mean to bump into you. Let's just walk away. No need for trouble." But the man was far too angry to hear reason. He took a step closer, invading Seagal's personal space, his eyes narrowing. "You're not walking away. You think you can just brush me off? You want to fight me?" Seagal raised a calm hand. "I don't want to fight. I'm just a man passing by. Please, let's keep this peaceful." The stranger laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Peaceful? Don't make me laugh. You look weak. I could take you right now." People on the sidewalk began to stop and stare. A couple leaned against a lamppost, their dog pulling at the leash nervously. A young man raised his phone, recording every moment, unsure what would happen next. Whispers spread along the crowd like wildfire. The stranger's hands curled into fists. "You think because you're calm you're safe? You're nothing but an old man. You don't belong here." Seagal's eyes scanned the crowd, taking in the situation, measuring the distance, every movement, every reaction. His posture didn't change, but the subtle tension in his shoulders, the slight tightening of his fingers, suggested that beneath the calm surface lay immense power. The stranger jabbed at Seagal's chest with a single finger, a childish attempt at dominance. "Answer me," he shouted. Seagal didn't flinch. "I have nothing to say to aggression. Walk away, and no one gets hurt." The crowd began to murmur. Some were clearly amused by the stranger's audacity. Others, sensing something beneath Seagal's calm exterior, started to back up slightly, giving him space. The stranger noticed the attention and growled, frustration bubbling over. "Who do you think you are?" he demanded. "You're nobody." Seagal's voice remained soft but firm. "Judge people by their actions, not their appearance. That's how you avoid mistakes." The man scoffed, clearly not understanding the subtle warning. "Mistakes? I'm making no mistakes. I can take care of this myself." He clenched his fists, bouncing on his heels, trying to psych himself up. Seagal tilted his head slightly, still calm. "You have a choice right now. Step back. Walk away. There's no shame in restraint." The stranger hesitated, scanning the crowd. He noticed the recording phones, the curious glances, and it only seemed to fuel his ego. He laughed harshly. "Look at all these people watching. They'll see me take you down." Seagal remained still, a silent anchor amid the storm of the man's rage. The crowd had grown. Whispers spread that something wasn't right with the stranger's assumption. Yet most were unsure what exactly. The man's impatience overcame him. Without warning, he raised his fist and swung it straight at Seagal's jaw. The crowd gasped. Some stepped back instinctively, fearing a real fight. Others lifted their phones higher, capturing what was about to unfold. Seagal didn't flinch. His stance was perfect. His body absorbed the punch almost as if it were a soft tap. The stranger staggered forward slightly, shocked at the lack of reaction. Seagal exhaled, steady and controlled, as though the punch had been nothing more than a gentle breeze. The man's eyes widened. Something was wrong. This wasn't the reaction of a man who could be intimidated. His arrogance wavered, replaced by a creeping sense of fear. He had no idea who he had just hit. Seagal's voice broke the silence, calm, low, unwavering. "You don't want to take the next step." The man froze. The crowd held its collective breath. Everyone was waiting. Something about Seagal's presence made the air heavy. His calmness wasn't weakness, it was controlled, measured power. Have you ever seen someone provoked for no reason? And tell me, which city and country are you watching from? Comment below. The stranger's confidence faltered. The crowd sensed it. A few people began to whisper among themselves. Seagal's gaze never wavered. The silent warning had been given. The next move, if the stranger dared, would decide everything. And in that moment, the tension on the street became almost unbearable. The calm before the storm was over. The city street, once quiet and ordinary, had transformed into a stage of tension. Pedestrians froze mid-step, their eyes wide, breaths caught in their throats. Phones hovered in shaky hands, recording, ready to capture whatever would unfold. The stranger, still reeling from Seagal's calm endurance of his punch, grew reckless with anger. "You think you're untouchable," he shouted, chest rising and falling rapidly. "You think you can just stand there while I humiliate you?" Seagal remained unmoved. His stance was unyielding, his voice steady. "Violence isn't a measure of strength. You still have a choice." The man's pride, however, had been wounded beyond reason. He took a step closer, his fists clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned white. The veins on his forehead throbbed with frustration. "I don't need a choice. I'll teach you a lesson right here." A small crowd had gathered now, forming a loose circle around the two men. Among them were a young couple, nervously holding hands, and a man walking his dog, gripping the leash so tightly that the dog whined softly. A teenage boy perched on the edge of a trash bin, phone in hand, filming the unfolding drama. Whispers rippled through the crowd, uncertainty and fear mixing with fascination. Seagal's calmness contrasted sharply with the stranger's chaos. The man swung his fists aggressively, reckless and uncontrolled. Seagal stepped aside smoothly, almost effortlessly, letting each punch miss by mere inches. Every movement was precise, controlled, like water flowing around rocks. The stranger's frustration mounted with every failed attempt. "You're cheating!" he shouted, eyes wild. "Stop moving like that." "I'm not cheating," Seagal replied softly. "I'm controlling this situation. You can still walk away." The stranger's aggression intensified. He lunged forward, aiming directly for Seagal's midsection. Seagal shifted subtly, pivoting, and guided the man's momentum harmlessly aside with a perfect redirect. The crowd gasped. Some whispered, sensing there was more to this man than met the eye. From the edge of the crowd, a few onlookers murmured, "Who is this guy? How is he so calm?" The stranger's arrogance turned to confusion. He had expected fear or submission. Instead, every aggressive move was met with an unshakable calm. His confidence began to crumble, replaced by a hint of panic. Seagal's calm gaze met the man's eyes. "Your anger is your weakness," he said. "You've been given every chance to walk away. Now, you're about to learn the hard way that strength without control is nothing." The man's hands shook. He was visibly nervous now, but his pride refused to let him retreat. I can't back down," he stammered, voice cracking. Suddenly, a young woman from the crowd, Seagal's friend from nearby, stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Please, just stop. It's not worth it." Seagal's head tilted slightly, acknowledging her, but he didn't speak. His focus remained entirely on the aggressor. He was ready to neutralize the threat if necessary, but only to protect himself and prevent harm. The stranger, now desperate to assert dominance, swung again, more violently this time. Seagal shifted just enough to avoid the punch, letting the man's own momentum carry him forward. The man tripped slightly, regaining his balance quickly, but the crowd had started to murmur in disbelief. "Look at him. He's not even scared," someone whispered. The stranger's panic was rising. His aggressive bravado was fading fast. Sweat glistened on his forehead. Every step he took forward now carried hesitation. He had misjudged Seagal completely, mistaking calm for weakness. Seagal exhaled slowly, a subtle but powerful motion. "You still have a choice," he said, voice low and commanding. "Leave now, and no one will get hurt. Stay, and you will learn what restraint really means." The crowd leaned in, sensing the shift. Some whispered, "There's something special about him, something dangerous." Phones continued to record, capturing every moment of the stranger's humiliation in progress. The man's eyes darted around, noticing the growing crowd, the people filming, and the subtle power emanating from Seagal. For the first time, fear replaced his arrogance. He was cornered, not physically, but psychologically, trapped by the realization that he had misjudged his opponent. If you were in Seagal's place, would you react calmly or defend yourself aggressively? Comment below, calm or strong. The stranger hesitated. Pride and fear clashed within him. Seagal remained unmoving, a beacon of control and discipline. The tension was nearly unbearable. Every passerby felt it. The street had transformed from ordinary city pavement to a silent battlefield where ego and restraint collided, and only one would maintain composure. The crowd had grown steadily since the stranger's failed attempts to dominate Seagal. Pedestrians who had stopped out of curiosity now stayed out of awe and unease. A low hum of whispers began circulating among them, tentative but growing louder with each passing second. People nudged one another, eyes wide, barely believing what they were witnessing. From the edge of the gathering, a man muttered under his breath, "Wait, isn't that Steven Seagal?" A few heads turned sharply, phones held higher. Another voice, This one, clearer and tinged with disbelief, echoed. "I thought he was retired? Navy SEAL, martial arts master." Seagal remained silent, his calm presence radiating authority. He didn't acknowledge the whispers, didn't take the opportunity to assert his fame. That was not his style. He was still focused entirely on the aggressor, allowing the man's own arrogance and misjudgment to work against him. The stranger, however, noticed the shifting energy in the crowd. Confusion flickered across his face. Murmurs of recognition reached him, but he refused to accept them. Pride had convinced him that he was the one in control. "Don't listen to them," he barked, raising his fists again. "I'm dealing with this." Seagal tilted his head slightly, eyes narrowing subtly. The calm precision in his stance was unnerving. Even without speaking, he communicated control, authority, and latent power. Every observer could see the contrast: the aggressor, wild and erratic, versus Seagal, composed and unshakable. Whispers in the crowd turned into hushed exclamations. "That's him. That's Steven Seagal, the Navy SEAL. He's unstoppable if provoked. Do you see how calm he is? He's trained for this." The crowd's awareness shifted the balance of power. People unconsciously took a step closer to Seagal, subtly shielding him from the aggressor, while others instinctively moved away from the man's escalating rage. Fear began to seep into the stranger's bravado. He realized he might have misjudged this man completely. Seagal, still perfectly composed, gave a slow, deliberate exhale. His voice, when it came, was low and steady. "You're still free to leave. There's no shame in walking away from a fight you don't understand." The stranger blinked rapidly, frustration and panic mingling on his face. I'm not backing down," he stammered, though the words lacked conviction. The whispers had unsettled him, and he could feel the energy of the crowd turning against him. Someone in the back of the crowd, a young man recording the incident, muttered, "This guy's not joking. He's not just a martial artist. He's on another level." Seagal's calm eyes scanned the gathering crowd. He didn't need recognition, didn't need admiration. He was not here to perform or intimidate. His silence and poise were enough to let the truth speak for itself. This was a man with decades of elite training, someone whose body and mind had been honed to perfection. The aggressor had no idea what he had just unleashed. The man shifted uneasily, fists twitching. His overconfidence was eroding quickly. I know what I'm doing," he shouted, though the words rang hollow. The crowd murmured in disbelief, some moving subtly closer to witness what might happen next. Others began to subtly cheer for Seagal, their energy quiet but palpable. Seagal stepped slightly forward, not aggressive, just deliberate. The crowd instinctively made space around him, a natural respect forming, almost invisible but undeniable. Every movement of his body communicated calm strength, mastery, and restraint, a lesson in contrast to the stranger's uncontrolled fury. Whispers escalated into audible recognition. "Seriously, that's Steven Seagal. He's a master of combat, Navy SEAL trained, and he hasn't even raised a hand. The guy who punched him is insane. He doesn't know what he's up against." The aggressor's arrogance was now crumbling. His breathing became heavier, and panic crept into his eyes. He could feel the crowd's shifting loyalty, not because of fame, but because everyone could sense Seagal's quiet authority. He had made a mistake he couldn't undo. Seagal's calm, unwavering stare locked on him. He didn't speak further. He didn't need to. The whispers of the crowd were doing what words could not, revealing the truth, breaking the aggressor's confidence, and building suspense for what was about to happen next. The man's face flushed red with humiliation. Every instinct in him screamed to attack, to assert dominance, yet every fiber in his body told him he had miscalculated entirely. He was trapped between ego and fear. The crowd could feel it, leaning in collectively, holding their breath. The stage was now set. The aggressor's ignorance of Seagal's identity had brought him to this moment. And though Seagal remained calm, the tension was unbearable. The crowd knew the reveal was coming, and so did the man who had dared to punch a legend. The stranger's panic was now palpable. His arrogance, once so fierce, had begun to crumble under the weight of the crowd's recognition and the eerie calm of Seagal. Yet his pride would not allow him to back down. His fists shook slightly as he lunged forward once more, desperate to regain control of a situation that had clearly slipped from his hands. Seagal shifted only subtly, his body a study in precision and efficiency. He didn't meet aggression with anger. He met it with control. Every movement was deliberate, every gesture economical. The man's wild swings missed him entirely, redirected seamlessly, the force of the attacks absorbed and neutralized with near-zero effort. The crowd leaned forward, holding their collective breath. The tension was electric. Murmurs and gasps spread like wildfire. "Did you see that? He didn't even touch him," one onlooker whispered. Another added, "He's trained for this. There's no way he's just an ordinary man." The stranger's confidence faltered. He paused, mid-swing, realizing he had no leverage. His own strength was being used against him in subtle, almost invisible ways. Every step, every punch, every movement was calculated by Seagal to minimize harm while maintaining absolute control. "You're still free to walk away," Seagal said, his voice low and commanding. "Every moment you remain here, you're choosing humiliation over reason." The man's chest heaved. Sweat glistened on his forehead, his breathing erratic. The crowd had grown bolder in their murmurs. "He's controlling him without even touching him properly," someone exclaimed, awe evident in their voice. Frustration and desperation finally overcame the stranger. He swung again, faster this time, his movement almost frantic. Seagal pivoted, redirecting the motion effortlessly. With a single precise step, he guided the man's arm to his side, applying just enough pressure to immobilize it. The crowd collectively gasped as the man's balance faltered. "You see now," Seagal said calmly, "strength without control is meaningless. Ego without awareness is your enemy." The stranger struggled, but Seagal's hold was impeccable, firm enough to restrain, gentle enough to prevent serious injury. It was a display of mastery the crowd could hardly believe. Whispers turned into awed comments. "Look at his technique. That's mastery. He's a Navy SEAL, isn't he? There's no way this is normal." Seagal maintained perfect composure, his gaze unbroken, his voice steady. "If you continue down this path, you will learn the hard way. But it's still your choice to step back and walk away." The man's frustration turned to fear. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to strike harder, to fight back, but he instinctively knew, deep down, that he was no match. The crowd's energy shifted entirely. Whispers of admiration for Seagal had transformed into an almost protective aura around him. People unconsciously moved closer, as if to support him. Seagal released just enough pressure to let the man regain balance, but never relaxed his watchful stance. "Respect is not earned through fear or violence," he continued. "It is earned through restraint, discipline, and awareness of the consequences of your actions." The stranger finally dropped his fists, his head hanging slightly in defeat. He had realized, far too late, that he had misjudged the man he confronted. Every attempt to assert dominance had failed spectacularly, and the crowd's recognition had left him humiliated and powerless. The crowd, sensing the climax, murmured in awe. A few brave voices began applauding quietly, while others whispered excitedly, filming every moment. The sense of spectacle was undeniable. A fight had almost erupted, yet it had been diffused by skill, control, and quiet authority. Seagal stepped back slightly, releasing full control but maintaining a commanding presence. He looked down at the man, not with anger, but with measured disappointment. "Remember this lesson," he said quietly, yet each word carried the weight of authority. "Never judge someone based on appearance. And never underestimate anyone." The crowd responded instinctively, a wave of recognition and respect spreading like wildfire. People began to talk excitedly, sharing observations about Seagal's mastery, the restraint, the controlled power that had neutralized the situation without unnecessary violence. The stranger, now fully aware of his humiliation, staggered backward, trying to regain composure, but the lesson had already been delivered. He realized that his ego had led him into a trap he could never have anticipated. The tension in the air began to dissipate, replaced by awe, admiration, and a profound understanding of what had just unfolded. This was no ordinary confrontation. This was a demonstration of mastery, discipline, and control that few would ever witness firsthand. The street had transformed completely. What began as an ordinary confrontation had become a spectacle of control, skill, and restraint. The crowd, now fully invested, whispered among themselves, trying to piece together what they had just witnessed. Many phones were raised, capturing the moment in shaky, excited footage that would soon go viral. The stranger stood in the center, chest heaving, fists trembling, sweat glistening on his forehead. His confidence had crumbled entirely. Every punch, every lunge, every attempt to assert dominance had been effortlessly countered or redirected. He had misjudged his opponent completely. And now, the murmurs of recognition spread through the crowd like wildfire. "Wait, isn't that Steven Seagal?" a young woman whispered from the back. "Steven Seagal? The Navy SEAL, the martial arts master," another voice added, incredulous. The whispers grew louder, reaching the stranger's ears. For a moment, he refused to believe it. Pride clouded his mind. "That can't be," he muttered. "There's no way." Seagal's calm gaze never wavered. He had let the crowd speak for him, letting their recognition do the work. He didn't need to announce himself. The subtle tension in his posture, the way he had neutralized the man's aggression, spoke volumes. One of the older men in the crowd, a retired Marine who had been watching from the side, stepped forward, pointing at Seagal. "Yes, that's him. You fool. Do you know who you just tried to fight? That man is an elite Navy SEAL." The words hit the stranger like a thunderbolt. His eyes widened, a flicker of panic overtaking what little arrogance he had left. The crowd gasped collectively. Phones recorded, hands flew to mouths, and the realization rippled outward. Seagal did not move. He did not smile or gloat. His calm presence alone had shifted the energy of the street. The stranger staggered backward, realizing the magnitude of his mistake. Every attempt to intimidate or dominate had failed against someone far beyond his comprehension. The retired Marine stepped closer to the crowd. "He's a master in martial arts and an elite operator trained to handle situations just like this. You've humiliated yourself completely," he said, his voice carrying over the tension. The stranger's face flushed red, his pride shattered. He glanced at the crowd, who were now openly whispering and pointing. Some were clapping quietly, others were shaking their heads in disbelief. Humiliation radiated from him like heat from a fire. Seagal finally spoke, his voice calm, steady, and authoritative. "Violence is never the answer. Strength is not about domination. Respect is earned through control and discipline. Learn from this." The crowd absorbed his words. Every individual felt the weight of his presence, the authority in his calmness, and the wisdom in his restraint. The stranger, now fully aware of the public spectacle he had created, lowered his gaze in shame. Phones continued to record as Seagal helped the man regain his footing. Not out of mercy, but to show that true strength does not humiliate unnecessarily. The lesson was complete. Humiliation had already done its work through the stranger's failed aggression and the public recognition of Seagal's mastery. The crowd erupted softly into applause and murmurs of admiration. People who had once been mere bystanders now understood the full story. "He's a legend," someone whispered. "And he didn't even need to strike him to prove it." Seagal's calmness and humility contrasted sharply with the stranger's rashness. The man now understood, far too late, that the stranger, still trembling slightly, muttered apologies, but no one paid much attention. His moment of bravado had been shattered, replaced by a lesson he would not forget. Seagal turned, adjusting his sunglasses, and began to walk away, his movements smooth, unhurried, leaving a street transformed. The whispers followed him, admiration, awe, and recognition of a man who had mastered himself before anyone else. The video footage from the crowd's phones would soon explode online, capturing not only the confrontation but also the full reveal of the man behind the calm power. By the time Seagal disappeared down the street, the lesson had already taken hold. The crowd dispersed slowly, buzzing with excitement, recounting the story to anyone who would listen. What had begun as a random street confrontation had become a tale of skill, humility, and discipline, a story that would be shared and replayed countless times. By the time Seagal disappeared around the corner, the street was buzzing. Pedestrians who had initially been casual onlookers were now narrating the confrontation to anyone willing to listen. Phones still in hand, videos had already begun to circulate online, the shaky footage capturing not just the fight but the stunning reveal of the man behind the calm and controlled presence. Social media erupted within minutes. Clips of the confrontation were shared across platforms with captions like, "You won't believe who he is. He didn't even need to hit him. Absolute master. This is how you handle bullies." Millions of views began pouring in within hours. Comments flooded in from around the world. People marveled at Seagal's discipline, control, and humility. Fans and strangers alike praised him not for dominance or aggression, but for the restraint he had shown in a moment where most would have resorted to violence. Meanwhile, the aggressor, the man who had thrown the punch, was left in an entirely different position. Humiliated and exposed, he had little choice but to admit defeat. Witnesses recounted his embarrassment in real time to the growing online audience. Some local news channels even picked up the story, emphasizing the lesson of misjudgment and restraint. The stranger's apology, though reluctant, was sincere. He admitted he had miscalculated completely and that his aggression had been a grave mistake. The street had witnessed not just a confrontation, but a moral victory. Respect had been earned, not demanded. Seagal had proven that mastery and calm carry far more weight than raw anger or physical intimidation. As the story spread globally, millions praised Seagal's approach. Comments poured in with admiration for his ethical stance. True strength is knowing when not to fight. He humbles bullies without ever needing to hit them. Legendary. This is a lesson everyone needs to see. Beyond social media, the story resonated with a broader audience. Martial artists, veterans, self-defense enthusiasts, and even casual viewers shared the video widely. The moral was clear: never underestimate anyone based on appearance, and always respect restraint and discipline. Seagal had reminded the world that true strength is measured not by aggression, but by control. Even the small details mattered. The way Seagal had maintained his calm, the precision of his movements, the unwavering authority in his voice, all of it created a narrative that would be replayed countless times. His actions became a blueprint for handling confrontation with dignity and intelligence, a lesson far greater than any physical victory could provide. The stranger, now humbled and reflective, became part of the viral discussion. Viewers debated what he could have done differently, how ego and pride had led him to disaster, and how restraint can change the course of a confrontation entirely. The crowd that had witnessed it firsthand became minor celebrities in their own right, sharing their perspective online, adding context, and amplifying the story even further. Seagal himself remained off-camera, unbothered by fame or recognition. He did not gloat. He did not celebrate. His mission was complete. He had turned a potentially dangerous encounter into a lesson about respect, restraint, and awareness. And in doing so, he had earned not just the respect of the crowd on the street, but millions more around the globe. If you believe no one should be judged by appearance, and that restraint is true strength, type respect in the comments. Subscribe for more powerful stories of courage, control, and wisdom. By the end of the day, the incident had become a viral phenomenon, a story shared across continents, inspiring viewers to reconsider assumptions, embrace humility, and admire the quiet power of controlled strength. Seagal had demonstrated, in real time, the profound impact of calm mastery over reckless aggression, a lesson the world would remember long after the street had emptied.